Thank you so much for opening up this week's version of the Calm the Chaos Insider. I am, as always, really glad you're here. This week we're starting a 3-part series on our thought life. Y'all, our thought lives matter. They impact not only our beliefs about ourselves, but our beliefs about others, the very relationships we have, the things that we have, and then they ultimately influence our actions. And as we move into this very chaotic or potentially chaotic season, I wanted to spend some time to help us all get into a mindset for peace, if you will. And so one of the things I wanted to talk about was just what's going on in our thought life. And so a couple of years ago, I hit kind of this wall, this really big wall in my thought life, and I really didn't quite understand what it was at first. You see, I knew I was experiencing something that wasn't right, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I looked around at my life and realized, my life is a pretty good life. I mean, it really is. Even though there were struggles and trials, it wasn't a horrible life. And yet I was feeling anxious and fearful and worried and just kind of stuck. And I didn't quite understand it. And on top of all of that, I kept coming across John 10:10, which says this. It says that the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Well, I kept looking around and going, okay, Jesus, I know you came to give me this full life, but I don't feel it. What's wrong? What's wrong with me? Right? Have you ever been in that situation where things aren't horrible, but you just don't feel like they're good? Like somehow there's a disconnect between you and your life, and what Scripture tells you is true, but you don't quite feel it? Well, that's exactly where I was, and I began to question why. Why, God, am I not feeling this? Why are things not aligning the right way according to what your word says about my life and about what I know to be true in my life? What's going on? And so what he showed me was something pretty dramatic, and it became a message that I gave, but it also became this focus that I have about things that I think we as women specifically really need to pay attention to. And so for the next 3 weeks, I want to dive into 2 Corinthians 10:3-5. I'm going to read it to you today all the way through, and then we're going to focus on just verse 3. This is what it says. For though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And that's the NIV version. And so after questioning why my thoughts, my emotions, my reactions didn't quite match up with the reality, I came to understand that the way I was thinking about my life was preventing me from experiencing the richness of it. I had this stronghold in my mind about the way my life was supposed to be. And because it wasn't lining up and I hadn't really identified that stronghold, how it got there and what was going on, it became this block for me. And I couldn't experience all the fullness that Christ came to give me in my life, and the fullness that he has come to give maybe for you in your life was cut off because of this stronghold. And so I spent some time with God, and I realized, we've got to demolish these strongholds. But demolishing strongholds takes some time, which is why I want to do this over the next couple of weeks, because I want us to really pay attention to our thought life and then find the truth that really destroys the strongholds that might be in there, so that those walls can come crashing down and we can truly, fully experience the peace and joy and love and hope and grace and mercy and forgiveness and whatever else might be blocking you out from experiencing the full life that Jesus came to give us. And so the strategy this week is focusing on verse 3. Now, verse 3 says this: for though we live in this world, we do not wage war as the world does. So let's break that down a little bit, right? The first thing we need to know in how to wage war is we need to recognize the battle. Y'all, there is a huge battle for our minds. If the enemy can get in with his lies, his nuances on the truth, his little twists about how things are supposed to be, comparison, envy, all of that, if he can get into our brains, then he can affect how we think. If he affects how we think long enough, he can create a belief system in our brains. And that belief system leads to how we act and react. And I don't want that to happen anymore in my life, nor in yours. And this is what it says in 1 Peter 5:8. And continuing on with John 10:10, it says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He's going to come and do that. That's the battle we're in. Also, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. He's there all the time. That's what he wants to do. The second thing we need to do is recognize our opponent. Y'all, we are not fighting against the people in our life. We are not fighting against our husbands. We're not fighting against our kids, against our parents, against our coworkers, against anybody. What we're fighting against is this. According to Ephesians, it says, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. That's Ephesians 6:10 and 11. So this is what we're fighting against. It's not people, it's the spiritual forces of evil that we're fighting against, and their brains are just as affected with their thought life as ours are, and we've got to recognize that. The third thing is to recognize is the way. Y'all, we are not to wage war, as the world does. We don't beat each other up. We don't try and yell each other into submission. We don't try and condemn or compare or any of the other things, or even striving to fix, striving for control, pursuing perfection. All of those things are the outpouring of a spirit controlled by the enemy's thoughts in our head, and I don't want that to happen to you. God's way is different. These are the effects. These are the effects that we can have when we're living a spirit-led life. We can offer forgiveness, grace, mercy, and above all, love. These are the ways we wage war, right? We offer forgiveness. We offer love, even the unlovable and the difficult. We offer grace when it's undeserved and mercy when it shouldn't be. These are the ways that we wage war, right? So this is what we need to do. This is the beginning of breaking down the strongholds. Ephesians 4:2-3 says this, be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. This, my friend, is how we wage war. So if we take the time this week to pay attention and recognize that you're in a battle, recognize who your opponent is, and then recognize what the way to wage war is, I promise you, you will start seeing some movement in this stronghold that you might have in your thought life. So I hope that you take the time to do that. And next week, we're going to dive into verse 4. So if you have any questions about verse 3, please let me know. I would love to hear from you and on this topic specifically, our thought life. It's something that is very important and near and dear to me. But also, while you're here, check out the rest of the articles in the newsletter. I would love to have your feedback about, are we putting things in there that you really like and really enjoy? So with that being said, thank you so much. And I cannot wait to share the next part of this with you next week. Thanks.